different than I had anticipated, but different in a good way. We touched on this the last time we spoke. John and I have had a close personal relationship for several years before we worked together. So we have a very trusting, open dialogue. You know, the thing that I think the biggest positive that I've seen out of this is that the conversations, because the topic is pre-chosen, the conversations go a direction that our natural conversations would not go. And that the way that, you know, the framework of the exercises forces us to go down a path that we would probably not complete because we would get sidetracked somewhere in the conversation and take it in a different direction and never come back and take the time to revisit. And that happened actually in our last mentor meeting when we were talking about the goal setting and the failures and things like that. We started getting really creative about the goals. Should we do them individually or should we do them together? And we said, well, why not just do both? Well, if we hadn't come back to the framework, we would have been we would have gone down that marketing rabbit hole. So no, it's been very, very good. Absolutely. Absolutely. It was very important to us when we were vetting these programs that it was not a hierarchical type of situation where you were mentoring someone that was beneath you in the organization on the organizational chart. You know, when we were talking back with Leanne and Ariane, Leanne and I were talking offline, and we had several calls with you just because we couldn't develop our expectations. There were just so many unknowns, and that's why we kept wanting to talk to you and get more information and try and get a clearer picture of what it looked like before we committed to it. Once we checked all those boxes, I think I was just excited to see where it went because it aligned so well with what we're trying to build as far as our culture and our organization. But the timing was just absolutely perfect to begin having these conversations outside of firm-wide meetings. So I would say the thing that is different is that I didn't expect, or that I was maybe, I don't know how to say this. I don't take offense to this at all. Please, I don't intend it that way. But I think maybe I thought people wouldn't buy into it as much as they have. And that was my skepticism.
And that's,
you know, and I've spoken with John, Leanne, and Itzel all one-on-one specifically about the program and, you know, the value that they find in it, the troubles that they have, and it's been nothing but very positive. And almost, I think a little bit like me, everybody's a little surprised by how much they enjoy it. So one of their big things is about DISC and understanding the different personalities and being able to quickly identify, and that coupled with the mentoring has absolutely made our communication more effective. I think it's helped me be better at my job by making me more attuned to my coworkers. And what I mean by that is, you know, sharing the exercises of vulnerability with John and seeing the benefits of taking a conversation a different direction than you originally thought you could or will. Applying that to other coworkers, I think is very helpful. So I would say awareness of how to communicate to build better relationships with them.
that's all.
So Brad and I obviously had some background, but I think the exercises have kind of provided a good framework, but we've kind of learned more about each other through the ad-libbing piece of things. And so it's kind of gone further connection, probably more about than about work, but I think we've also been able to apply, I think we've also been able to kind of trust each other more with things maybe that have come up through work because of what we've gone through, what we've experienced in the program. So I think we were a little skeptical, like he had mentioned, just in terms of there's a history there, right? And how much more could we learn? And so I think it obviously proven through 2 meetings that it makes sense. There's no doubt about it. So I think from that standpoint, the skepticism has kind of worn off of, yeah, like, okay, we can still do this and learn more about each other and try to build off one another, than just being like, oh, we know each other, this is fine. They provide, yeah, I think what they do is they provide a starting point, no doubt. Being productive or not productive, but learning more has just been a byproduct of learning how we can be like, okay, you said that, what does that mean? How does, like, just to try to dig a little deeper. But I think it's also like I don't know if I've mentioned this, but we went into that meeting like where he was prepared and I wasn't. So like, obviously you have the things that you're supposed to read, and he was like, hey, did you read this? And I was like, I mean, I glanced at it, but I didn't like go in depth. And he's like, well, we were supposed to have X, Y, and Z done. And I'm like, so we actually broke it up into 2 different meetings. And so we did one where we just kind of shot it like by the hip, if you will. And then we came back for a second one with us kind of more prepared. So it was almost as if the collaboration helped because we could brainstorm first and then execute second, if that makes sense. So any frustrations that we have no problem sharing. And I think the trust factor there of having our best interest in mind, whether it's something that we want to do or don't want to do, whatever that may be, but having the best interest, like, we know it's not coming from a place of, like malice or anything, right? Like, it's coming for the betterment of the group. I think having some of these experiences and sharing some of that and knowing where the person is coming from has just made it a lot easier to be like, oh, I know where you're coming from, and that makes sense.
I could say that it's very different than I was expecting in a positive way, because I thought it was more leaded, towards the mentor to the mentored person. So seeing that it's both ways at first was kind of like, surprising in a good way, because I was expecting her to be the one who provide more feedback rather than me giving, feedback to her as well. And then I think my favorite part was understanding how to be vulnerable, can, kind of like build a stronger relationship between us. I think the last meeting was great, because we could both like be clearer in our current goals. I don't think we had the time to actually like think about that specifically. Like, we did know that we have our goals in a short-term and long-term situation, but we never or at least on my end, I can speak for me, I didn't sit took a few minutes to actually give it the time that it needed for me to settle my monthly goal and my next 6-month goal. So I think that was pretty neat. So the first meeting, we didn't follow point by point. I think it went organically. So when we tried to follow the agenda, it was like, okay, we did cover this and we did cover these other things. But for the other, subsequent meetings, it was very useful to have that so we could, cover a little bit more ground. Yeah, definitely. It helps me to get the time and think further than just day-to-day work. Like, sometimes it's good to, take a break and think about how the next steps are, for me to keep growing and setting goals, and what's the most efficient way of setting goals. And yeah, also, it's not easy for people to either give feedback or receive feedback. So I think one of the things that helped me a lot at my work was the part of, finding people's blind spots so I could provide feedback without them to feel offended or, like I'm attacking in some way. So I think that helped me a lot, because we recently read a book that said clear is kind. So as clear as we can be without having people offended, I think it's the way to, you know, bring the best of people at work and at home. So I think that was one of my biggest lessons learned from this program.
Yeah, you know, it's going pretty well. I mean, it is a little different than I had expected, or it's different than I think I had envisioned, which I knew part of that going in. I had envisioned mentorship program, and some of that is just even too from my, you know, prior experiences as well. So it's just a little bit different than I expected or anticipated. It's been good. I think, you know, one thing, it's kind of just a different approach. So, I mean, I look at it more from, you know, between Itzel and I, it's like I'm finding out a lot more about her, and it's kind of a little bit more about finding information about one another. And you are helping each other grow in the process, or you're trying to. And that's like a good thing. I think, you know, in the past, it's like I've just kind of really sought out advice, and so it just looks a little bit different. But I mean, it's been good. It's been, and you know, and by finding out more about her, it's like helping us like work together. I mean, we've had a good working relationship, but I just understand some of her. I understand more about her, so that's been a good aspect of it. I do, yeah. It has, and that has been nice. I think, you know, that helps. I think one thing that it has been good for me is just to remember the importance of, because it came at a very busy time for work-wise. And so I think it was good just to remember the importance of taking time to invest in others and having a lot of self-reflection and taking some time to do self-reflection as well. Like, so, because in our line of work, especially like during our busy season, it can just be really hard to like take your eye off of anything like chargeable project related. You know, it's all full steam ahead. And so it's kind of like, you know, just squeezing these extra things in. And so I think it was good because it was a discipline to make us do that. You know, someone else was counting on you, like you wanted to do it as well. And so that was, so I think that's been good. I think probably the biggest benefit is just like getting to know Itzel better and kind of understanding like how she works. And I think, you know, we had a good work relationship, but I think we'll have a better work relationship as a result of it. So